Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Max. I write and talk about books under the name Gemma Tate. And today we are talking about The Hunger Games again. Specifically, I want to talk about the relationship between Katniss and Peeta, best known to plenty of folks on the internet as Everlark. I have taken a lot of notes. All of these notes are Everlark specific. All of them. And they were supposed to be color-coded, and then I ran out of blue Post-its, and now they are what they are. So in looking at their relationship, I'm looking at really four central defining dynamics or patterns of thought that we can dig into. The first variation on a theme of their relationship is Peeta is in love with Katniss. Katniss thinks that Peeta is trying to execute some grand strategy and she does not trust it. Second option is Katniss is in love with Peeta. He either thinks that it is straight up manipulation or hasn't actually clocked that while she's sitting there staring at him, she's not having scary murdery thoughts, she's having cute mushy thoughts. Option number three is this idea that they are sort of a predestined perfect fit for one another, and all of the symbolism in the books, starting in one of the very first chapters actually, points to the two of them ending up together in a very cute, epic romance kind of way. And then the fourth dynamic that I really want to look at is this idea that the two of them are the right people for one another, but the timing is never quite right until the very end. And the way that their dynamic shifts and changes so that they're always just a half step out of tune with each other, but they get closer and closer and closer through the progression of the books, and there are a couple of spaces where they are perfectly in tune with each other, and when it works, it really, really works. And as a result, there's this kind of inevitability of the two of them getting together in a way that really mirrors or almost rhymes with that grand predestined perfect fit of it all. On this note, these are all of my cute little annotations. My sticky note for Peeta being in love with Katniss and Katniss not really realizing it or not really trusting it is green. My sticky note for Katniss being in love with Peeta and Peeta not totally clocking it is pink. I was expecting that the entirety of book one would be tabbed green and the entirety of Mockingjay would be tabbed pink. That is not what happened. I was genuinely surprised by this particular reread. So I want to go through it chronologically in terms of when things appear in the books, and we're just going to go through these annotations for the most part one by one. We might differ a little bit on that. We might go back to some earlier ones when we notice a really good callback. And these are the old school hardcovers. I think this was the first boxed set right when the movies started coming out. It might actually be pre-movie. There's no now a major motion picture anywhere on here. So we are going to start literally on page 7. And by the way, this is a blue sticky tab. This is a grand predestined love story. All of the symbolism points to it. Sticky note. We are on page 7. And Katniss and Gale are meeting up in the woods because it's chapter 1 and that's what's happening in chapter 1. And Gale says, "Look what I shot." And he holds up a loaf of bread with an arrow stuck in it, and Katniss laughs. It's real bakery bread. Fine bread like this is for special occasions. That's what Katniss says. Who is our symbol for bread in these books for the most part? It's Peeta. It's our baker boy. Real fresh bakery bread, which Peeta symbolizes, is for special occasions. It is a treat. Symbol number 1, that they're a good fit, is that bread is considered a treat. Peeta is a treat. Now, next sticky tab in here. It's orange. Right person, wrong time. When we are looking at who the best relationship is for Katniss anywhere in here, a lot of people will point to the old discourse of Team Peeta, Team Gale. I don't like that discourse, and I don't like that discourse because we have this idea that Gale was ever an option. And the reason why I'm going to say that we don't really have Gale as an option is because we're on page 18. There's never been anything romantic between Gale and me. When we met, I was a skinny 12-year-old, and although he was only 2 years older, he already looked like a man. And when they have a conversation about kids and what it would take to leave District 12. And that conversation, by the way, is happening in book 1. And it's actually page 17 where it really starts. Katniss says, I never want to have kids. Gale says, I might if I didn't live here. And Katniss says, but you do. And he says, forget it. And the conversation feels wrong because Katniss goes, leave. How could I leave Prim, who's the only person in the world I'm certain that I love? And Gale is devoted to his family. We can't leave. So why bother talking about it? And if we did, where did this stuff about having kids come from? Katniss cannot envision a future in which she is safe enough, where she feels safe and secure enough to have children who will not be reaped into the games. And when she does picture it, she does not picture it with Gale. And that is important because we're going to talk about that a little bit later. There's a moment in Catching Fire where Katniss is daydreaming about having Peeta's children. She daydreams about having not just any kids, Peeta's kids specifically, even after she has acknowledged that Gale is family and she genuinely does care for him. And she's still not 1,000% sure that love is the word that she would attach to it, particularly in a romantic sense. Anyway, next sticky note. This is our description of the boy with the bread. The boy with the bread, who toasted or burnt loaves. And as we describe it, we have Katniss, who is, by the way, literally starving, probably not going to make it through the winter. And the boy, Peeta, never glances her way. And he has these 2 large loaves of bread that must have fallen into the fire because the crusts were scorched black. And we see Peeta very intentionally stepping over a threshold to toss chunks torn from the burnt parts over towards the pig and then throwing the loaves to Katniss. And on the one hand, yes, he is her symbol of survival, and then a full page later, he's her dandelion. The dandelion that is the symbol of spring that reminds her that she actually does know how to see plants and know what's edible and what's not, and the dandelion being the symbol of what's going to get her through this winter, what's going to ensure that her family survives, and that is going to guarantee her survival, which turns her into this force of nature and force of survival for her family. Before any of that happens, Peeta takes a loaf of toasted or burnt bread and throws pieces of it over a threshold. You know what throwing pieces of bread, crumbs of bread really, toasted bread over a threshold is in District 12? That's a marriage ceremony. The first interaction that Katniss can ever remember having with Peeta is the District 12 marriage ceremony. It's the toasting, and we find that out in Catching Fire. And I think that that is cute. And again, I blue sticky tabbed it. This is very much like sign of relationship, sign of good fit, outlined on page 38 of book 1. And the other thing that we get also in this chapter is Katniss saying that she doesn't think that the odds could possibly be in favor of her surviving long enough in the games to have any kind of meaningful interaction with Peeta. And what she specifically says is, oh well, there will be 24 of us. Odds are someone else will kill him before I do. And then the next line is, the odds have not been very dependable of late. So we have our sort of immediate signal that the odds have not been particularly dependable, and she's probably going to be the person in a position to kill him, and later she is. They are in a position of power over one another and over each other's hearts. Then, just a little bit later, we get the cookies from Peeta's father, and Katniss is sitting there going, a kind Peeta is far more dangerous to me than an unkind one, which is true, but not for the reason that she thinks. A kind Peeta is dangerous because he's compassionate and charismatic and good at making kind of the wrong kind of friends, and would be far more useful to the rebellion than Katniss will be. But she doesn't know that, he doesn't know that, none of that is relevant at this point. Katniss is sitting there thinking, oh my god, he's being nice to me, it's a plot, it's a ploy, because the girl does not recognize when people are trying to be nice to her. She's not the most reliable narrator, particularly when it comes to other people's attitudes towards her. Anyway, shortly thereafter, we get Katniss having to remind herself that oh, Peeta's definitely going to be the one to kill me. He's luring me in to make me easy prey. The more likable he is, the more deadly he is. Also, she literally cannot take her eyes off of him. She is developing a little bit of a teeny tiny crush. And it is very clear that she's beginning to recognize that there is a little glimmer of a real person under who and what Peeta has shown himself to be at this point. This is further confirmed where Peeta actively steps in to save Katniss when Katniss recognizes the Avox who's been assigned to the District 12 team as the girl who she saw in the woods. I have a whole video on things that I wish had been included in the movies. I talk a lot about Lavinia, the Avox, in that video. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. But Peeta, out of nowhere, snaps his fingers and goes, Deli Cartwright, that's who it is. I kept thinking she looked familiar too, and then I realized she looks just like Deli. She doesn't, to be clear. This is Peeta lying to protect Katniss and Katniss recognizing it. And he then, next page, asks for an explanation. And Katniss can't quite come up with one without prying eyes and ears, checking what she's saying. So Peeta suggests that they go up to the roof. And this is where we begin to see that maybe there's a little bit more to Peeta, because he listens, and it's a very clear, oh, you were out in the woods, you were breaking the rules, we have no judgment here. Also, you went through something really freaking traumatic, because neither Katniss nor Gale has ever talked about Lavinia and the unnamed boy out in the woods before. And Peeta sees that Katniss is shivering and gives her his jacket, and Katniss has this little flash of a thought that this is what friends do, right? And like, is that what friends do? Is that what friends do, or is that what a boy who likes you does? Good question. And through their time in the Capitol before the 74th Games, Peeta's basically just sitting there going, oh wow, she has no idea the effect that she can have. I really like this girl. Even before he announces to the Capitol and the live casting and everything, like, yeah, I'm in love with this girl. He's sitting there going, no, she's really pretty. She's really convincing. She has no idea the effect she can have. And Katniss is sitting there the entire time like, it's a ploy, it's a plot, it's a plot. There's a strategy behind this. Like, no, there's not. Come on. And that's how it goes for the bulk of the time in the Capitol, because they're pretending. And finally, Katniss says, don't, let's pretend when there's no one around, because she can't keep straight when they're friends and when they're not, versus when they're supposed to be pretending to be in love. And that is true for the whole book, because when Peeta announces, like, yeah, I can't be with the girl that I like because she came here with me, Katniss throws this boy into an ornamental vase, breaks everything, shards of ceramic are embedded in Peeta's palms, and Katniss is sitting there going like, I trust no one and nothing and everything is terrible. And Haymitch just looks at her and goes, oh my god, you're stupid. And like, he's not wrong. And Katniss and Peeta sort of get over it, but not really. They're not at a point where they really trust each other, because Peeta has just turned his back on their immediate alliance. They're not being trained together anymore. But they go up to the roof together, and it's the night before they go into the games, and Peeta says, I want to die as myself. I don't want them to change me and they're turning me into some kind of monster I'm not. And this is where we get that really important line from him that he doesn't want to be just a piece in somebody else's games. And Katniss says, you're not more than a piece in their games. None of us are. That's how the games work. And Peeta says, okay, but within that framework, there's still you, there's still me, don't you see? And Katniss says, I guess not really, only who cares? And Peeta says, I do. What else am I allowed to care about at this point? And this is a really good clue into who and what Peeta is. Because Peeta has been thinking about who he is in the grander scheme of things in a way that Katniss has not. Katniss has not, at any point up until this, begun to conceptualize what a life outside of the confines of District 12, the confines of the Capitol, could look like. And we start to get the sense that maybe Peeta's been dreaming about it all along, and it doesn't look like a gigantic fight. It doesn't look like a big rebellion with bombs and fire and an uprising. To him, his rebellion is about individuality, about maintaining and keeping his humanity. And there's a really poignant moment in Mockingjay where Katniss acknowledges that she has become a slave to the Capitol in the very act of what she has to do to overthrow them, because she has ruined her own humanity in the process. And there's a really poignant and upsetting callback to this very line, where she registers that she has absolutely become a piece in their games the second that she forgot about what that individuality and humanity meant to her. And so I have this marked down as right person, wrong time, because both Katniss and Peeta end up in that same place of just wanting to keep what makes them them, in a way that, for the record, Gale never once does. Gale does not particularly care about maintaining his sense of self. He would like to be a cog in a machine, as long as it is a machine that ultimately takes down the Capitol. So there's that. That's another way in which Gale and Katniss are not necessarily a perfect fit, even though it might seem like it on the surface, even this early in. So then we get into the games proper. And Katniss sees, oh my god, Peeta went and joined the careers, everything is terrible. She goes through some shit, she teams up with Rue. And we find out from Rue that Peeta split with the careers to go back and save Katniss, to go back and move her away from the Tracker Jacker nest. There's more to be said there about Tracker Jackers and how that really is the very first start of Katniss and Peeta truly trusting each other, and how that relates to the hijacking later on being the underpinning of how they stop trusting each other. Not the point of this one. For now, what I want to do is fast forward to the second that Katniss figures out, oh, Claudius Templesmith just said there's been a rule change. Under the new rule, both tributes from the same district will be declared winners if they are the last two alive. And Katniss cannot stop herself. She calls out Peeta's name. It is immediate. And then she goes, maybe not. And then she goes off and she finds him, and he has disguised himself as a rock, which, you know, his true talent is painting, whatever. And Katniss goes, oh my god, you're genuinely really talented. Also, I'm really relieved to see you. And on the one hand, we can read this as she's just glad that she has an ally. But also, she's gotten a pretty good sense that she would be just fine at surviving this on her own. She does have the skill set to win this. And Peeta's not in a good place. Peeta has a very nasty stab wound on his leg. And she still wants to dig him out of the riverbank and clean him up and take him to a safe place and help him recover. I have this whole section marked pink because she spends the entire time going, oh my god, you're a person who I like and who I trust, and you're here and you feel like home, which is a reasonable, valid thing to be feeling in that moment. But she's also not able to stop herself from admiring just how good at camouflage he is and how good an ally he would be if he was healthy, which, like, he's not. It is not a useful analysis to be doing for somebody who is a gifted hunter. But, you know, it's all very cute. And we have this moment of a whole bunch of interactions that don't matter that much in the context of book one. They come back really strong in Mockingjay, because these are the memories to which the Capitol has access later on to screw with Peeta's memory of. These are the interactions between the two of them that the Capitol has a direct feed to because there are cameras everywhere. It's in the games. This is what the Capitol has as material to mess with when Peeta is later hijacked. And they're also memories that Peeta is able to reclaim as his own when he starts really fighting to overthrow what the Capitol's done to his brain. And we get very direct callbacks later on to Peeta remembering the conversations that they've had in the cave, and Peeta going, I know what blood poisoning is, even if my mother's not a healer. And later on in Mockingjay, that's one of the lines where Peeta goes, oh, no, I remember what this was like the first time you said it, not the times when the Capitol screwed with it. And these memories become the anchor point that bring them back to each other in a lot of ways. So I have a lot of this first book marked in pink because so much of it consists of Katniss realizing that actually she would risk a lot for him, even if she was capable of losing everything as a result, because she is maybe starting to fall for him. And this is important because we have learned at this point, Katniss is perfectly capable of winning these games on her own. I want to make that really, really clear. So by the time that we get to the feast, where, there's something special at the cornucopia for every district team, and Peeta says, no, you're not going and getting the medicine that would literally save my life. You're not going to do it. And Katniss is not a good liar. This is a really important thing here. Katniss is not a good liar, particularly to Peeta. And yes, a lot of the flirting that Katniss is doing through this book is specifically, explicitly for the cameras because Haymitch has told her to put on a show, and it's working. It is getting them gifts from sponsors. It is allowing them to continue to survive. But when they start really talking and there's genuine memories in there, Peeta remembers the very first time that he ever saw Katniss, just like she remembers the first time that she ever saw him. And Peeta points out that Katniss's father is actually most of what he remembers about this first interaction because his own father pointed at Katniss's dad and says, hey, see that coal miner? When he sings, even the birds stop to listen. And Katniss goes, that is true. Oops, you were paying attention. And then that day in the music assembly, and this is on page 381, when the teacher asks, who knows the Valley song? Which, by the way, as somebody who grew up in the South, Appalachia adjacent, I would like to point out, the Valley song is definitely down in the Valley. Most of the songs and music referenced throughout these books have their roots in legit Appalachian folk music. I have a whole video on Appalachian murder ballads and how the entire series is structured like one. But also, the music is important because the music is rooted in folk songs and folk heritage and to some extent Southern protest music, which is double relevant because District 12 is a coal mining town. Whatever, I am on a tangent. Katniss's hand shoots up and she sings, and every bird outside stops to listen. And Peeta says, in a way, my name being drawn in the reaping was a real piece of luck because it guaranteed that the two of them would meet. And it's such an important moment in terms of the overall symbolism of, remember, the odds are in no one's favor because their names are all in the bowl. Prim's name is only in there once. The odds are still not in her favor at all because her name is an option to be picked at all. Somebody like Madge Undersea has her name in the bowl only 5 times. And Gale makes a really snipey comment that's like, oh, well, you're not going to be picked because your name is only in there 5 times. Peeta's name is in there the exact same number as Madge's, and he is picked. The odds are in no one's favor, but in this particular way, fate conspires to allow Katniss and Peeta into the space where they can be genuinely vulnerable and open and honest with each other. And in this way, they come together and they really do have a strong allyship and friendship and connection growing at this point. And they get through to the very end of the games and they have the moment where, oh, Cato's dead, we're gonna maybe... And then the rules change. And Katniss tries to be objective about it. Her first reaction is, her bow is loaded. The arrow is pointed straight at Peeta. And Peeta says, no, do it. And Katniss says, no, I can't, I won't. And Peeta goes to take the dressing off of his leg because he is ready to sacrifice himself to get her home. And Katniss will not let him do it. Neither of them is willing to let the other die. And yes, they are trying to blow up the games a little bit because without a victor, the whole thing would blow up in the game makers' faces. And so Katniss has her first little thought that is a true rebellious thought. But to Peeta, it's not ringing true as rebellion just yet. And I have this marked as both pink and green because in some ways it is Katniss genuinely falling for Peeta. She's not willing to let him die to get her out of there. But it's also Katniss not really totally trusting that this is anything other than another plot. She doesn't really trust that it's actually love because how could she under the circumstances? But, and this is really, really important, not even 2 whole chapters later, they're doing the interviews, and this is page 359 of my copy. No, 358, I'm sorry. And Katniss realizes that Peeta is absolutely going to suffer just as much as Katniss for the stunt with the berries. And Katniss says, what was it Haymitch said when I asked if he'd told Peeta the situation that we had to pretend to be desperately in love? And Haymitch says, don't have to, he's already there. already thinking ahead of me in the games again and well aware of the danger we're in, or already desperately in love? I don't know. I haven't begun to separate out my feelings about Peeta. And the thing is, both of the above are true. Peeta has started to figure out the larger game because Peeta is not stupid, and Peeta is beginning to be very aware of how the Capitol operates. And we see this in how he interacts with somebody like Caesar Flickerman in the interviews. And Katniss can't quite separate it out yet, but she's also reaching a point where she can't untangle her feelings about Peeta from the interactions that they've had up until this point and the amount of trust that they've built together. And finally, they get on the train, and when Katniss confesses that not everything on her end has been genuine up until this point, she recognizes that she is dreading the moment she will have to let go. The boy with the bread is already slipping away from her. And I have this marked as right person, wrong time, because just as Katniss is beginning to realize that she is actually falling for him, all of a sudden everything has to be a performance again. There's no time for them to learn to be genuine with each other. And then we get into Catching Fire. And this book is almost entirely pink, because in so many ways, Katniss and Peeta understand each other in a way that Gale and Katniss absolutely do not. Katniss has a moment where she realizes that she's going to have to marry Peeta, and they are not going to be able to get out of this without keeping up the farce for probably forever. And Peeta apologizes because he says, I knew you had something with Gale. I was jealous of him before I even officially met you, and it wasn't fair to hold you to anything that happened in the games. I'm sorry. And Katniss says, I don't hold that against him. In the arena, I played the romance angle for all it was worth. But there are times when I honestly don't know how I feel about him. I still don't. And this is where they start to genuinely become friends. This is where they start to have conversations about favorite colors, about getting to know each other. And Peeta begins to paint, and we realize that Peeta's really a very gifted artist, and in better times, he would have been a painter. And Katniss has this moment of wanting to spend her time with him, regardless of being forced to. They're drawn to each other in a lot of ways. And as all of this goes on, because they're on their victory tour and they're being forced to spend a lot of time together, we realize that both of them have nightmares. And the only time Katniss does not have nightmares is when Peeta is in the room with her. Likewise, Peeta still has his nightmares, but we get this very cute moment of most of his nightmares are about losing her. And through the victory tour, Katniss has a couple of moments that are like, what do you mean you're falling in love with me? What do you mean we're back to this? But at the same time, Katniss is beginning to think of Peeta as home. To the point where when Katniss goes, oh, we're gonna maybe have to go flee and run away, and we can totally do that, and she pitches this idea to Gale. And again, Gale is not a good fit for Katniss because Gale's first reaction is, yeah, let's go, just you and me, also I love you. And Katniss is like, not what I was saying with that. Like, we're gonna have to take our families, we're gonna have to take our siblings, we're gonna have to take the people that we care about because the Capitol's gonna come after them too. And like, these are really bad tensions and these are really bad times because there's an uprising in District 8. And Gale is immediately like, the second that it's not, ooh, just you and me and our cute little romantic runaway from the district time, Gale goes, uprising? I want to start an uprising. Give me an uprising. And he gets very, very iffy about the idea of taking anybody with them. Peeta's reaction to the same question is, sure, I'll go. And Katniss goes, you will? And he says, yeah, but I don't think for a minute you will. And Katniss says, then you don't know me. Be ready. It could be any time. And Peeta, again, Katniss is not a good liar, and Peeta has learned how to clock it when she is lying. And Peeta says, I really will go if you want me to. I just think we better talk it through with Haymitch. Make sure we won't be making things worse for everyone. Because Peeta is thinking about the other people that Katniss cares about, because that is Peeta's first impulse. Because he knows Katniss. She's not ever going to do anything just for herself. She is consistently going to make the choice that is best for the people that she cares about, whether they like it or not. She's already thinking about trying to get her mother out of there, trying to get Prim out of there, trying to get Gale's mother out of there, trying to bring Haymitch with them. And Peeta goes, yeah, okay, I'll go with you if you really want to do this. I don't think that you will, because I don't think it's genuinely going to be better for all of these people. And that is the point. A couple chapters after this, we also get, I think, a really very cute moment of, and it's cute, it's also under really terrible circumstances, where Katniss has been breaking the rules. She's been in the woods, and this is after tensions have already gotten much, much worse in 12. And Katniss basically falls over the electric fence back into 12, definitely bruises a tailbone very badly, and then gets back to her house, and there are peacekeepers waiting there. And the whole interaction, it's genuinely funny, because Katniss walks in and is like, oh, well, I was actually not out in the woods hunting. I was talking to the goat man about getting Prim's goat pregnant because somebody lied to me about where the goat man lives. And Prim and Peeta immediately jump into like, no, we didn't. We told you exactly where it was. And Peeta immediately just goes, I'm sorry, it's what I've been saying. You don't listen when people talk to you. And he's like playing along, but also he's playing along in a way that is very clear that he really knows her. And Katniss has this moment of, this is why they've made it this far, Haymitch and Peeta. Nothing throws them. And Peeta takes the opportunity to be like very cute, and also to immediately check in with Katniss like, hey, actually, where were you? Like, what were you doing? It's really a very funny moment. Haymitch and Peeta steal Katniss's peppermints and basically kick the peacekeepers out. But Peeta, the second they are gone, is just like, hey, actually, what's wrong? Because clearly you're not okay. And also you were talking about running away a day ago. Like, talk to me. And he does not buy any of her BS that like, oh, actually, she just slipped and fell on some ice. And then he stays with her. And we have this very cute moment of Katniss wanting to tell Peeta about the rebellion and about the uprisings and about this idea that maybe District 13 is a place where they could be safe. And she doesn't get around to telling him and regrets it instantly. But she's already sort of going under with the sleep syrup. And she says, stay with me. And we learn that Peeta says always. And Katniss remembers it, even if she doesn't think that she does. That's what Peeta says. He says always for when he's going to stay with her. This is also when we start to learn that Peeta is just genuinely spending time with the Everdeen family. And it's when they start working on the family book. It's when they start working on the stories that they want to pass down and remember. They're starting to think about what could be a future. And this comes back in the epilogue in Mockingjay, but the groundwork is laid for it on page 168 of Catching Fire. They are genuinely thinking about a future together that is not run by the Capitol. And as we go through this whole book, it's very clear that when Katniss is thinking about family and people that she loves, Peeta's really high up on that list. And when Peeta's thinking about survival, he has stopped thinking of his own survival. Every action from the moment the quarter quell is announced is how does he get Katniss back home? Meanwhile, Katniss, who has not admitted that she has feelings for this boy, is spending every single strategy session with Haymitch going, hey, how do we make sure that he's the one who survives this time? How do we make sure that he's the one who goes back home? And immediately, when the announcement is made, Haymitch says, oh, so what do you want me to do? Volunteer for him? Take his place, Haymitch, because all things being equal, I'd rather Peeta had a crack at the rest of his life than you. And Katniss says, no, I came for a drink. We have to figure out how to get him out of this. We have to figure out how to get him out of this alive. And Haymitch agrees, knowing perfectly well that it is not going to work out that way. Because either Peeta is going to be named and Haymitch is going to volunteer to take his place, but Peeta's not really very likely to survive in those circumstances anyway, because the Capitol is going to want to punish him for the little bits of rebellion, especially because Katniss is not likely to make it out of these games alive. Or we get what actually happens, which is that Haymitch's name is going to be called, and Peeta's going to volunteer for him, and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, as we get through the entirety of the quarter quell, it's funny, the first time that I have anything marked pink is the same moment that convinces both Finnick and Snow that Katniss is in love with Peeta. And it's Peeta running into the force field and being electrocuted. And ignoring the fact that we get a very entertaining moment of Finnick giving Peeta what is clearly just like basic CPR and Katniss going, Finnick is kissing Peeta? Like, objectively funny. But also, there's this moment where Katniss does not know what to do if Peeta's gone. And she is crying. She is hysterical. And everybody else kind of steps immediately into the, oh, the baby, you have hormones, even though she is not pregnant, she does not have hormones. But we get this moment of all Katniss wanted, and I'm on page 282, all Katniss wanted was to keep Peeta alive, and she couldn't, and Finnick could, and she's nothing but grateful. And she's also furious because it means that she will never stop owing Finnick O'Dare. And it is a very clear moment of she is genuinely in love with this boy. And that means that they are royally screwed because it means that there is something to hold over her. But also, she genuinely loves this boy. The next thing that I have marked in here is the locket that Peeta's wearing through these games. And it's a chain with a gold disc. And the people in this locket are photos. On the right side, Mrs. Everdeen and Prim laughing. And on the left side, Gale actually smiling. And Katniss says, there's nothing in the world that could break me faster at this moment than these three faces. After what I heard this afternoon, which is the Jabberjays, it's the perfect weapon. And Peeta says, your family needs you. And Katniss goes, my family, my mother, my sister, and my pretend cousin Gale, but Peeta's intention is clear, that Gale really is my family, or will be one day if I live, that I'll marry him. So Peeta's giving me his life and Gale at the same time to let me know I shouldn't ever have doubts about it. Everything. That's what Peeta wants me to take from him. And Peeta doesn't mention the baby, which is how Katniss knows that none of this is for the games. All of this is genuine. And Peeta says, no one really needs me. No one is going to be upset for very long if I'm gone. And Katniss realizes that only one person will be damaged beyond repair if Peeta dies. And it's her. And she has that realization in the same instant that Peeta is willing to just lay down everything for her, knowing that he might not be her choice in the end. And Katniss has a series of thoughts in this moment. First, she says, I feel that thing again, when she gives him a kiss. The thing I only felt once before, in the cave last year. I kissed Peeta about 1,000 times during the last games and after, but there was only one kiss that made me feel something stir deep inside, only one thing that made me want more. And she acknowledges that she never felt that with Gale. She has only ever felt that with Peeta. Girl is catching feelings. And they go to sleep, and as they go to sleep, Katniss drifts off and tries to imagine a world in the future with no games, no capital, just a place where Peeta's child could be safe. She is thinking about children with Peeta. She is thinking about a place where children could be safe. She is envisioning a future in a way that she could never have done with Gale. And that is so, so important because she is able to conceptualize a future with him as she's realizing that she has feelings for him. And that is the entire turning point of their relationship, right when it gets to like the best place the two of them have ever been in, right before everything comes crashing down and Peeta's not rescued with Katniss and Finnick and everything is terrible, because then we get to Mockingjay. And again, I expected Mockingjay to be mostly highlighted pink, because that was going to be Katniss in love with Peeta, Katniss yearning for Peeta, Peeta not totally registering what's going on with that. That's not what's happening here. This is almost all Katniss thinking that Peeta is somehow tricking her, and or right person, wrong time. We do get a moment of pink, and that moment is a moment where Peeta's not even present for it. It's Crazy Cat, which is the game that Katniss plays with Buttercup and a flashlight. She even gets like special batteries for it in District 13, which is like a big deal because they're rationing batteries for a silly game with a cat. And Katniss says, Crazy Cat becomes a metaphor for my situation. I am Buttercup. Peeta, the thing I want so badly to secure is the light. As long as Buttercup feels he has a chance of catching the elusive light under his paws, he's bristling with aggression. That's how I've been since I left the arena with Peeta alive. When the light goes out completely, Buttercup's temporarily distraught and confused, but he recovers and moves on to other things. That's what would happen if Peeta died. But the one thing that sends Buttercup into a tailspin is when I leave the light on but put it hopelessly out of his reach. high on the wall behind even his jumping skills. He paces below the wall, wails, and can't be comforted or distracted. He's useless until I shut the light off. That's what Snow is trying to do to me now, only I don't know what form his game takes. Maybe this realization on my part is all Snow needs. Thinking that Peeta was in his possession and being tortured for rebel information was bad, but thinking that he's being tortured specifically to incapacitate me is unendurable. And it's under the weight of this revelation that I truly begin to break. Take this passage and think back to that moment in Catching Fire where Katniss realizes that the only person who will genuinely break apart if Peeta's gone is her. And that is exactly what happens. Peeta is gone and she begins to genuinely break apart. We also have this moment where Katniss says, "What do you think the Capitol will do to Peeta?" And Prim, who, at this point, keep in mind, Prim has been through so much. And she sounds about 1,000 years old when she says, "Whatever it will take to break you." Whatever it will take to break Katniss is harming Peeta. If it wasn't clear that she is falling in love with this boy. Get a number of moments through this book where it becomes clear that Gale has become a person who is no longer right for Katniss, because again, he has been willing to become a cog in a machine, a pawn in somebody else's games, a piece of a game, for the sake of taking down the Capitol, in a way that Peeta certainly wasn't willing to, and now neither is Katniss. And when we get Peeta back, Katniss is, quote, lightheaded with giddiness. And then she thinks, oh, who cares what I say? Peeta will be ecstatic no matter what I do. He'll probably be kissing me anyway. And this is so, so important. Because up until Peeta's hijacking, Katniss has been the one who got to care a little less. Peeta was always in love with Katniss. Katniss was never as head over heels for him as he was for her. And the hijacking genuinely levels the playing field between the two of them. Because up until this point, Peeta has loved Katniss, and Katniss has been making the choice to care for Peeta. During the process of Peeta recovering from the hijacking / rewriting his own memories in his own brain, and Katniss deciding to love him anyway, it levels the playing field between them. Because all of a sudden, Peeta is the one thinking that Katniss is a threat every time that she says that she loves him. And Katniss is the one who loves him and wants to be there for him and wants to lay down her life for him. And Peeta's the one who's making the conscious choice to love her despite what he thinks is going on with her. And that's so incredibly important because it makes them well matched. It makes it a choice on both of their parts. And throughout this book, we have Katniss and Peeta both remembering and overwriting bits of information about each other in their brains. Things like favorite colors, things like favorite activities, favorite choices of activity outside of the context of just survival. So painting for Peeta, or for Katniss, just being outside. And Katniss is starting to remember things like Peeta saying always when she asks him to stay with her. And they're also, like, by the way, both on a lot of drugs. They are both in, like, very bad medical and also psychological shape throughout this book. So something that I really appreciate is that their presence in each other's lives is not there to heal each other. It's not like, ooh, the magic power of love lets them solve all of their problems. They solve all of their problems and then they sort through the feelings and realize that what they have is real. And throughout this book, we're playing this game of real or not real, where Peeta tries to remember something and then asks, is that real or is that something that the Capitol has injected into my brain along with a hefty dose of tracker venom? And it's things like having forgotten his own favorite color. It's things like not remembering the reality of how a situation shaped up in the games. It's things like not being sure whether or not Katniss loves him, or whether she is a terrifying mutt who is going to cause problems for him. And we get a very sketchy moment where, like, maybe it's a sign that we should not be trusting Coin, where Coin puts Peeta on the Star Squad. And Katniss goes, oh, this is, like, not good for me. And Katniss, who, by the way, has been lying to her squad this entire time and is like, yeah, I'm actually on a special mission from Coin. I'm gonna go assassinate Snow. Just don't question it. And they have absolutely clocked her on her bullshit at this point, by the way. But Boggs gets got by one of the traps and gives Katniss the hollow and says, don't trust them, don't go back, kill Peeta, do what you came here to do. And Katniss is thinking through this over and over and over again and thinking through, who do I trust right now? And her thought in this moment is, I won't go back, but Boggs must know that I can't just fire a bullet through Peeta's head. Keeping in mind, Katniss has recognized multiple times over at this point that Peeta being with her squad is the greatest threat to her survival. Now compare this to book 1, where at the end of the 74th games, Peeta being alive in the same space as her once the rule change is revoked is the greatest threat to her survival. And she draws a bow and points the arrow at Peeta's head, actually at his heart. And in this moment, Katniss realizes that she couldn't do it. She is not capable of harming Peeta. Not really. And that comes up a couple of times through the rest of this book, because there are 2 separate requests for Peeta's death in less than an hour after Peeta kind of accidentally kills another member of their group. Peeta says, I just murdered a member of our squad. And Finnick and Katniss are both sitting there going like, no, we're not going to harm you. And Peeta says, do you think you'd be doing me a favor by sending me back to Snow? Like, I'm the monster, I'm the mutt, I'm the one who Snow has turned into a weapon. And this is echoed a couple of times over by Katniss sitting there going, the games have turned me into somebody I'm not. My humanity is gone. I have become a piece in these larger games, because at this point they are thinking of their approach into the Capitol as a 76th games in a lot of ways. And Katniss has a moment where she's like, no, by doing these atrocities, by committing these acts that go against my own humanity, I have become a slave to the Capitol. Peeta's having the exact same thought process here. They are thinking the same way, and Finnick is following their logic. And Katniss is thinking back to the Hanging Tree, where the man in the song wants his lover dead rather than to have her face the evil that awaits her in the world. Gale, by the way, is all for killing Peeta. And Katniss is sitting there going, would it be the kind thing to do? And she registers that she can't, because it would mean having his death on her conscience. And it's not just that she doesn't want to kill anybody else, because that's not a problem for her. It's specifically that A, Snow will have won, and B, he occupies too much space in her heart. She cannot do it. And this is a turning point for them, because it is through their progression of working together and Katniss being specifically assigned to keep an eye on Peeta that Peeta starts remembering the reality of their real relationship. Because Katniss is cleaning Peeta's wounds and he goes, I know what blood poisoning is, even if my mother isn't a healer. And Katniss is jolted back in time and goes, you said that to me in the first Hunger Games, real or not real? And Peeta goes, real, and you risked your life trying to save me. And so Peeta is remembering. And at that point, she says, there's no point in setting up a guard for Peeta. He's not actually a real threat to us at this point. And it is true. It's real. Because in remembering all of these things, bit by bit, slowly, he still has real bad points. Peeta's recovering what's left of his humanity. Again, they fix themselves well before they really get together for real, but you can see the breadcrumbs along the way. And finally, rebellion works for the most part. Snow apprehended. Rebellion moves into the capital. And Katniss shoots Coin, because she has realized that Coin is not actually functionally going to be a better leader than Snow as far as humanity goes. And Katniss is ready to commit suicide after having done this, because Prim is dead and Katniss does not feel that she has anything left to live for. And when we think back to the locket that Peeta had with Katniss's reasons to survive in it, it had Mrs. Everdeen, who Katniss is not particularly close with, Prim, who is dead, Gale, who Katniss no longer trusts or loves the way that she did, particularly with the method of Prim's death in the mix. So she goes to bite the poison pill off of her uniform, and Peeta's hand is there stopping her. Again, Peeta, who is half out of his mind still at this point, is sitting there going, I cannot let you do this. And finally, Katniss goes back to District 12. She is non-functional. and everything is terrible. But she's slowly, bit by bit, beginning to come back to herself. If you haven't watched my video with Katniss and Buttercup and the process of how Katniss comes back to herself, feel free to go watch it. I cried when I was making it. But finally, Katniss goes out on, quote, what would have been the old Katniss's favorite kind of day. This is when she comes back and sees Buttercup. And she's thinking about what Gale might be up to at this point. And Gale is not coming back to 12. Gale is in District 2 with some kind of fancy job, and Katniss realizes that Gale has definitely already found somebody else to be romantically involved with. And she has a moment where she realizes that, like, she's not jealous. He doesn't fit in her life anymore. And finally, Peeta arrives. And it's heartbreaking because he doesn't have anything left in 12 either. Neither of them really have family there. Neither of them have much of anyone besides Haymitch and Greasy Say. And it's described as slowly, with many lost days, Katniss comes back to life. And it's really important that when Peeta arrives, he does not come empty-handed. He's carrying bushes, rose bushes. And at first Katniss goes, oh my god, no, there's a symbol of everything terrible. But then she realizes that they're primroses. Peeta has come back carrying the one thing that Katniss genuinely needs to heal, which is somebody who understands what she has been through and who is coming out the other side of it himself as well. And it's very, very slow. It is acknowledged that they both have bad days. And the way that it's phrased in the book is, Peeta and I grow back together. There are still moments when he clutches the back of a chair and hangs on until the flashbacks are over. I wake screaming from nightmares of mutts and lost children. But on the night that I felt that thing again, the hunger that overtook me on the beach, I knew that this would have happened anyway. This would have happened anyway. Epic love story. They were going to find each other eventually anyway. And Katniss says, what I need to survive is not Gale's fire kindled with rage and hatred. I have plenty of fire myself. What I need is the dandelion in the spring. The dandelion in the spring. The bright yellow that means rebirth instead of destruction. The promise that life can go on no matter how bad our losses. That it can be good again, and only Peeta can give me that. And when he whispers, you love me, real or not real, Katniss says, real. And then we get the whole bit with the children, which I have a whole video about that as well. Feel free to go watch that. The children are our sign that the world is genuinely safe again, that Katniss feels safe. So I don't really want to talk about the epilogue being our sign that Katniss and Peeta are genuinely good for each other. I think it really is rooted in that symbolism of the dandelion, of rebirth, of safety, and more important than anything, the fact that they are already on their journey, their respective journeys, towards being healed when they find their way back to each other. They become really friends as children, as 16-year-olds who are stuck in the most horrific of situations. And it is tenuous, but the breadcrumbs are still there from the beginning. The little pink sticky notes, those are there from the very start. They fall in love as young adults who have been through something unimaginable. But it's not a permanent attachment. This is not Harry Potter. Everybody does not marry the person that they meet when they're 12. They don't really truly become the epic love story that they are meant to be until they have come out the other side of it. And I think that that is so incredibly important. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Everlark has always been meant to be. There was never a love triangle. The symbolism points to the two of them ending up together starting on page 7. Because if we go back to that idea of Gale holding up the loaf of bread with an arrow in it going, look what I shot, our introduction to Gale is through violence. It is through upending a system. It is through working that system to get something that he wanted. Which, like, yes, am I overthinking an arrow stuck in a piece of bread for a comedic moment? Probably. But the idea that the thing that is procured that Katniss really wants is bakery bread, symbolic of Peeta, and the things that she's looking for as signs of beauty, signs of reasons to get through it, things like a dandelion, things like the toasted bread loaves that we learn in Catching Fire are symbolic of District 12 marriage. They're meant to be from the very start. I think it's really, really cute, but it's also in the little moments of them realizing that, yeah, it is real, And also it is going to take so much work to get to a point where they can be safe and together again. So that's my breakdown of Everlark. If you enjoyed this, please feel free to hit like, subscribe. If you're still here after I don't even know how long I've been talking, thank you. And I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye.